This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1838, Book of the Month Club, Starman, issues 0 to 11. And I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Ian Leatherstein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Eberly. We made it, folks. We made it.
After
Stars come out tonight.
All these years.
After 9 false starts, we finally...
For those who are watching it, I almost got it. This is the original Starman figure from DC Direct.
DC Direct, yep.
And 1990 whatever, and I still get the battery to work.
It's impressive.
That's inside.
Wow.
I'm reminded of how long my childhood Cyclops toy still worked. It still lit up the red eye beams on the front.
Ruby Quartz.
Yep, the Ruby Quartz. It was the X Factor outfit. I remember the blue and the white that I owned as a child.
Giant X right across the torso.
Exactly. That would be the one. Yeah, I think it finally died like maybe 5 years back when I went to test it again. I'm like, so close.
Well, and this, truthfully, truth being told, this is a horrible figure. I absolutely hate this figure. It only goes in one way, and that's there's no action to it at all.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Your
early DC
articulation,
Direct
yeah.
figures were not great.
They
I
were
was gonna
horrible.
say, yeah.
I remember Preacher looked like Mr. Potato Head, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a great likeness of Jack either. He's too square.
No. And I have the Mattel one from DC Universe Classics. It's up on the shelf. It's like on the third row. There's not a chance in hell I'm digging it out. I'll knock half the stuff over. And I don't like that one either. He's way too tall and bulky. Jack is more normal to me, not muscle bound. I mean, he looks almost like a Power of the Forces Luke Skywalker from '95, where they were
that's
big,
not
bulky.
flattering. Not flattering at all.
No. So
one of these days they'll get it just right. It'll be 100%.
yeah, I mean, I'm not pulling this out either, but I do have the DC Direct statue that has him kneeling down with the staff in his one hand.
Yeah.
And
I've
the
seen
jacket and
one
everything.
before. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's probably the best representation I have in a 3D form.
Well, we are indeed here for the Book of the Month Club, and it's remaining the Book of the Month Club for anybody who is on Facebook and watched the drama unfold. And not really that drama. Not really that dramatic. More like, hey, let's take a poll. On second thought, maybe not. As Murd rightfully pointed out, it's the Book of the Month Club, meaning it could be any month that it damn well pleases.
And the book of this month, in whatever month we happen to be recording one of these things.
Exactly. And just in time for January to be done, that's when this is happening, and this is when it's coming out, and that's the way we're going to make it happen. And
Yep.
before we get there, the people who help make it happen are you, the listeners, right there. Finger guns at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. This is a good time to remind folks, as as we approach the second month of 2022. It's been about a year now since we launched it, a little bit more than a year, and I'll tell you, it's been a hell of a ride, and we currently have 121 patrons on the ride with us, and we thank you so much for that continued support of the show.
Indeed.
As we move forward here. So once again, patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. If you are unable to use Patreon or choose not to, traditional donations are still available at comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php. We recently got a couple, so much appreciated over there. Or just send us an iTunes review on iTunes, or let Spotify know that you like us. It's so many different ways that you can make the show continue to be out there in the ether. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So here we are. It's Starman, and it's a long time coming, as I think there are very few comic books that have been mentioned as many times on this show as Starman has, for many a reason. And I'm going to go around the table here. And obviously, we're talking 12 issues of a comic here, but I'd like to know when you first discovered Jack Knight's Starman, and what you thought about revisiting it for this here book of the month, and all that jazz. Shane, I think we're gonna have to follow up with you, friend.
I was just digging out my iPad. I have the book here that I'm going to look at when we start talking about stuff.
Mhm.
When I discovered it, it was quite simply for a Halloween costume. I was looking for something easy and something that I didn't have to spend a whole lot of time putting together. And I'm walking around Golden Eagle Comics. John and Alex were working. I'm sure Peter might have been there. Kevin would have been there at that time probably, and we're just doing our regular Wednesday gab session in the store. And I'm looking around, and I come across one cover. If I can find it quick, bear with me, and I'm probably not going to be able to because I'm rushing. And it had, oh, there it is. It might have been this one.
Okay.
And it's the cover to number 45 because it has a great picture of the back patch of his jacket. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So as you can see over my left shoulder, that is the coat that I did from, it was 1998 or 99 when I did it, I'm pretty sure. And it's just a coat that I got at the Goodwill. Yeah, probably 98 or 99. A coat that I got at the Goodwill, some felt, and scribbled on with a marker pen. And that's my first introduction to Starman, was just an easy costume. I had not read an issue up before that. I had not looked at anything. I had absolutely no idea who he was. And then I read the issue somewhere along the way and started to pick it up when somebody was on the cover, like they had a Justice League crossover or something. So I grabbed that issue somewhere along the way. And then I actually started reading it, and I was absolutely blown away. And then I went back and got everything and read it from start to finish. So mine was to make a simple Halloween costume.
Had to start somewhere, and what a better place to start.
Yeah, what an accidental love for this book do I have now?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Murd, how about you?
Well, I discovered Starman at the very beginning, actually. I discovered it at the same time I was discovering most of the rest of the DC universe. Because Starman, our readers must be reminded, was actually one of several titles to spin out of the 0 Hour Crisis in Time event in 1994. And I was just kind of beginning to dip my toe into reading DC Comics after a couple of years of collecting exclusively Marvel. And I sent away to that American Entertainment Company that used to advertise mail-order comics in the pages of comic books. And I ordered the entire 0-month pre-pack. And there, on your screen, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll see the cover image from Starman number 0, which is, in fact, the first issue of the series. The number 0 preceded, in proper chronological order, the number 1 issue. So it was actually the first issue. And it was part of a whole wave of 0 issues for every single title DC was publishing, but for a few of them, the 0 issue was the first. It was the class of 94, Starman, Primal Force, The Man Called Fate, and Manhunter. And most of those titles treated legacy in one respect or another. They were all either retreads of old DC hero names, or they at least involved older DC characters. In the case of Primal Force, Red Tornado was a member, for example. Starman, of course, was the only one of those. Oh, there was also the Xeno Brood miniseries. The less said about which, the better. But yes, definitely the most likely to succeed of the class of 94. And so that's how I came to possession of Starman number 0. And I knew right away that I was holding something special, something that distinguished itself from most, if not all, other comics on the shelves. Certainly most other superhero comics on the shelves. It was just the tone and the mood and the setting especially. I mean, Robinson, from page 1 of issue number 0, just introducing Opal City. What a rare gem, pun intended, that is, that he introduced to DC lore. It was an approach to superheroes, superhero history and lore, and also just to the art and joy of collecting old things. just uniting two loves that most readers of comic books, to one degree or type or another, both experienced. And so I've found a couple different reasons to love it, because I loved superheroes, and I loved going with my dad to various auctions, yard sales, antique malls, and so forth to troll for old comics and other old things that he and I were both interested in. So yeah, Starman grabbed me from the very beginning. It's Yes, and the artwork of Tony Harris with its wonderful occasional deco and occasional pulp noir stylings,
Yep.
with the help from Wade von Grawbadger and colorist Greg Wright. It's just it visually distinguished itself pretty well from any other book on the rack as well. It had all the literary aspirations, some might say pretensions, depending on your point of view, of a Vertigo comic of the day, but it still refused to let go of super. It treated superhero lore with dignity and respect for the most part, except where it poked fun at the more ridiculous aspects through Jack's sardonic dialogue. And it was like nothing else that was being published at the time. And after reading the first couple issues, and I was kind of on the fence as to whether to continue reading it, number 4 was what finally hooked me in. The story about the magic Hawaiian shirt that was actually a gateway to the afterlife. Yeah, that's after that, I was a subscriber at Pagoda Comics, which was my LCS of record at the time, through my time in Penn State in college. And when I came back afterwards, I was on this ride for all 80 plus issues.
Chris, what about you?
So for me, my love of Starman originated from, I'll call it retailer serendipity. So it's the summer of 2000, and I'm in my store in its second location, Post Flood in Westfield, New Jersey, where I had to shop for a couple of years before I moved to Kenilworth. And it was like a slow summer, like weekday or something. And, I would routinely read stuff I'd never read, so I could talk about it with customers, make recommendations. And I don't remember where, but I'd heard about how great this book was. And I had all the trades in my spinner towers. And I said, let me try this. So I never read any of James Robinson's work before. I mean, I heard of him, but that was it. I didn't know Tony Harris's work really. So I remember I took a folding chair. It was a beautiful day, and I propped it up in like the entrance way. So like between the door and the sidewalk, and I kind of propped my feet up because it was very slow, like, I don't know, like afternoon, like a Thursday, like some day where people just weren't coming in at that time. And I started reading. And within a matter of days, because this is 2000, the series is almost over at this point, if I remember correctly, right, Shane? Wasn't it nearly over?
Boy, I don't know when it ended.
Yeah, the bottom line is most of the series was in trade by this point.
Right.
So I had just the sublime pleasure of reading through almost the entire series in a handful of sittings.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And like Murd said, one of the things that struck me right off the bat was, and I related to this, that he was a shop owner and essentially a dealer of pulp and old things. I remember the one moment in the store where he describes to himself the joy of smelling all the old things in his shop. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is my life at that point in so many ways. And so I was really taken with the narrative voice, the fact that he was not, well, he was very much a legacy character. He was also in many ways rebelling against that legacy, or kind of making it his own in a way that was very different from what his father was doing. I was so taken in with the constant callbacks to DC history, and I always love when creative teams reverently acknowledge the past rather than just trash it, and work it into their stories, which again is the mark of great writing. And Tony Harris's art just floored me, like Murd mentioned, the aesthetic of it, the design sense. But first and foremost was Jack Knight, the character, and his voice and perspective, because he's almost like, if we were thrust into that world and suddenly had to deal with these responsibilities, he's speaking for us in many ways. and what also really, really affected me, and I know Shane will feel the same way about this, was exploring his relationship with his father. Again, this is the mark of what a great writer Robinson is. Like, that he really, and because we're only talking about the first 12 issues, and I want to say, as great as they are, the series is just 10 times better as it proceeds.
Yeah.
Like we're like, this stuff is great, but man, it's just the beginning. So
it's nothing comes.
Yeah. So, but throughout the whole series, the development of that relationship, and you know, the fallout from like the brother's death, like it's one of the most well-written relationships in comics ever, as far as I'm concerned, because it's real. Like,
Yeah.
you take away the superpowers, that is a
Typical.
real father-son dynamic with the baggage and the history and the disapproval and you know, run down the list, right?
Disagreements, love.
It's this book for me is a master class in the comic book. And as far as finite series go, it's like in my world, like, you know, obviously Priest Black Panther is way up there. This is way up. Like, this is,
Oh yeah.
And like I said before, last thing I'll say, for people who haven't read it yet, who are listening, it just gets better and better. Like, as the team gets into the groove of what they're doing, as they're realizing this world, and when he brings in like the history and like the Western character, like, it's amazing what he accomplishes in this book.
Yeah. Oh,
It's a incredible achievement.
And there's things that not specific to the stories in this series, but there's things that happen in this format of the series, the times past stories, the way that they're broken up throughout the series, that is at times replicated in other series, and it works, but not as well as it did here. This was the first. This was the groundbreaking. This was the gold standard for how to do something like this. And again, others try it, and it can work sort of, but it never quite as well as what it did here. Things that happen in these first 12 issues come to complete fruition by the end of the series in so many ways. It's just amazing.
So I came to Starman. I was in college, actually, and I remember at the time I was reading JSA. You know, Jeff Johns' JSA was you know, in the thick of it, and I had just gotten into that. I remember, I think the first JSA that I really picked up, or Jeff Johns' JSA, was right at the beginning of the Hawkman stories. Right when he brought Carter Hall
good.
back.
That's good.
And I had already been reading Young Justice, so I was familiar with Courtney from her appearances in Young Justice, and then I saw her in JSA, and I did a little bit of research on her and realized that, you know, she didn't always have the staff, and that got me to find the final volume of Starman. That's where I started my Starman.
Oh wow!
Was on the last volume. And I investigated it, you know, and I read it through, and I really enjoyed everything that I got to know about the character there. And then for years, that's all I had read was that final volume. I was actually perfectly satisfied by that. You know, I knew enough about Jack Knight, I knew enough about Starman, I knew what I was looking for. And then DC Comics released the gem that I am holding up to
best
right here.
Omnibus ever.
Yes, the Starman Omnibus. I am beyond thrilled. There are only 2 like omnibus collections that I am super happy to own all of: Starman and Invincible. That's it. And this right here like changed my reading life in a lot of ways, because like you when you get it on the ground floor, and you realize that in a lot of ways, everything I love about DC Comics kind of started here in a lot of ways. You know, I always talk about legacy and how much I love it, you know, and how that's always mattered to DC Comics. It may have always mattered, but James Robinson brought it back in the 90s and really made it matter. And I think that without comics like Starman, we may not have ever gotten the level of legacy that I essentially grew up with and was thrilled to, you know, envelop myself with, you know, because it basically proved that you don't have to always go back to the well. You can grow upon what came before and make something new and unique that stands on its own, but also has that legacy behind it. And that's absolutely what James Robinson crafted. And it's on display from basically the start of this series. And yeah, it's no other. There is no other.
Well,
Well put, sir. Well put.
It also took things like the way, and I don't want to say silly, but I don't have a better descriptive word for it, but the way that they would have been written in the 40s and 50s as silly, campy stories.
Yeah.
He takes those characters and some of those situations that may have happened, but makes them current for today and their interactions. So during some of these stories throughout the series, you have interactions with some of the old JSA members, but they're adult, grown up, sometimes heartbreaking stories that they go through. But they're set in a time period that would have never been written like that when they were first written, because it's just not how comics are written. But he plays with that universe, that legacy and that past times, and makes it matter for today's storytelling.
Yeah, because
Without
sorry, Shane, go ahead.
without deflating it or making it less important.
Well, the greatness of the concepts, and this goes back to early Marvel Silver Age too, is there. And then as sensibilities change through the decades, which you were referencing, you know, a top flight writer is going to recognize the kernel that was great there in the beginning. Like I always think about this much later in the series and explore Ted's adulterous affair with Black Canary.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so well handled in the book. Like, and again, I won't go into too much more detail for those who haven't read it, but and it's way down the road in the series. But there's a nuance that's applied to these stories that is just the mark again of a master writer.
Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, the way that it starts out, you know, that right off the bat, you know, we're met with a character that from the first couple of pages, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the guy on the cover.
Yeah. And then, only the first couple of pages for a while.
Exactly. Because then immediately after that, you're met with the death of a Starman. And you realize that, okay, this is not just going to be, you know, I'm taking over the mantle, you know, from the person before me. Like there's mystery involved here. There's intrigue involved here. And Jack Knight is basically being thrown into the fire because there's no other Starman to take the lead.
And he really puts up a fight for it to not do it too. And in these first few issues, there's such an incredible, absolutely wondrous supporting cast, unlike The Witch has almost never been seen, until you talk about all the supporting cast that Superman might have in his book years to build up. They're introduced in these first few issues, and they're the backbone of the entire story all the way through to the end.
Well, what Robinson does so effectively, and I also wanted to point, I forgot that one of the great editors in the history of the medium, Archie Goodwin, was the editor of this book, which I think should be noted because that's probably very important because he was a great editor.
After his passing all the way through to the end of the series, he was still credited as guiding light.
Yeah. So
2001, the first 80 issues ended.
Thank you, sir. What I was going to say was that to come back on Shane's point is that one of the most exciting things about reading this series right from the get-go, as you stated, is that he really is being given the room to world build. And he really, I mean, he's taking some elements from DC Universe and his history, but he's also folding all that into a whole new city, as Murd mentioned, and its history and its secrets. And he just plants so many great little moments in the plot that are going to be realized down the road. And God, it's one of those moments where, like with any kind of meeting, you're like, well, most stuff is crap, and then there's some stuff that's pretty good, and then there's a few things that are really good. Then there's this, and there isn't much to compare it to, in my view.
If you said it before, I missed it because I was looking for issue numbers and dates. But was there an Opal City before this?
No, it's entirely James Robinson's invention.
I couldn't remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, in the old Starman stories of the Golden Age, well, in common with most superheroes, his home city was not really clearly mentioned. It was often implied that it was New York City. But then Robinson came along and, taking advantage of Crisis and Zero hour to do a
Sure.
little bit of fudging here and there with the canon. He had established that Opal City was Ted Knight's home and retroactively always had been.
And yet if you read it, and now years and years have passed since we've read it and started it and whatnot,
Mhm.
you kind of forget it was never there.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's always been there.
And that's
And-
a testament to the writing he did.
Not only that, it's been 20 plus years, or 94, 2004. Yeah, 20 plus years that it's been in existence. It's really something the way he weaves those tales through this wondrous city.
Well, can I say too that the architecture of the city,
Beautiful.
it actually feels distinctly West Coast to me, and I'm not exactly sure what exactly it is. It could be because I'm familiar with Seattle and what have you, and that it does have like some of the architectural like nuances that I would describe in that fashion, but it does not feel like New York. It has like some of the Gothic elements of New York, but at the same time, it's so unique and not unlike anything else you would see in any other city.
Yeah, and the fact that it was founded as late as 1864, as compared to a lot of other like East Coast cities, which have a much longer history than that.
Yep.
I see what you're saying, Ian. Stylistically, I always thought it was a Western city too. I actually, in my mind, I placed it in Colorado someplace.
Okay.
But then I think officially, canonically, somebody at DC decided it was in Maryland. Which
Really?
Maryland.
I thought it was West Coast too.
I get so annoyed that well, specifically there are editors that are obsessed with placing like DC cities in Maryland. I've heard before that Metropolis is in Maryland. It's not an East Coast city. It really isn't. And to place it there when Baltimore, it doesn't feel like Baltimore to me. You know, Baltimore has a very different style of architecture than this. And as you just pointed out, Murd, like it wouldn't have been founded when it was founded if it was in Maryland. It doesn't make any sense.
That's bizarre.
What it does have in common with places like Metropolis and Gotham, though, is like those cities named. It kind of takes an element of well-known city life, like well, it's been said that Metropolis kind of developed into like downtown Manhattan on the sunniest day in the middle of the summertime. I think this is Denny O'Neil. I'm paraphrasing something that Denny O'Neil once said. Whereas Gotham was a much different, less savory part of the city in the dead of night and the coldest day in January. Opal City takes like the historic bohemian fashionable hipster haven part of any major city. I guess I'm going to take a stab here, Ian, and say like Williamsburg, and spins it. It kind of grows that from cell culture into an entire city all its own.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Yeah, which may also be why I'm thinking the Seattle type, because you know, like that Portland or Seattle, like the hipster haven area. And also I ran into tons of you know, old school you know, pawn shops and secondhand shops and what have you when you went into the downtown areas of Seattle. So that definitely. So we have to mention the Shade. Oh boy,
what a different
shadowy gentleman
take on a character than ever was done before.
Well, I mean, I would say that while certainly there's a golden age, you know, ancestor, this is Robinson's character. I mean,
through and through.
And he took the power set and the look, and then he made a whole new character and one of the most vital and interesting characters in all of, you know, modern DC history, basically.
Yeah. Yep. And a character that has so many, like, this is like the 7-layer cake of characters, you know, because just when you think you've gotten to know him, there's another layer underneath, and there's another layer underneath, there's another layer underneath, because not only does he have such a long history in DC Comics, but he's not at all the person that you think he is. If you outright think, well, this is a JSA villain, he's the Shade, like, I mean, he is, but he's also more than that. You know, he has a heart. He cares about his city, which is clearly the case. And he's just there's just so much going for him that we'll probably never even know, because it doesn't matter how much is written about him. There's always something else.
And at the same time, he also kills very casually.
Oh yeah.
Not afraid to shed blood if he thinks it's warranted, or if he just feels like it. It's just such a delightfully amoral figure.
Yeah, it's one of the great templates in any kind of literature or film or whatever, when they take the most interesting character is always the one who's always morally ambiguous. Like you're like, oh, I almost don't want to like this person, but you end up rooting for that person, and their motives are not always clear, and sometimes they do things that's shocking, or sometimes that they're noble. Sometimes you're not sure why they're doing what they're doing. That makes them all the more compelling. He's the consummate example of that type of character.
Yep.
Yeah, very much so.
Fun background fact. The basic blueprint for the character that Robinson eventually built into the Shade, he developed a year or so earlier, before Starman saw print at DC, when he was all set to write a Doc Samson miniseries at Marvel. Which back when, as Robinson puts it, Marvel was doing any book with any character. Never quite made it to print, but he had worked up a treatment for the classic Marvel villain, the Ringmaster, which would have painted him as kind of an amoral figure. Who was kind of trapping Doc Samson in a world of terrifying carnivalesque whimsy. And a little bit of that found its way into Starman, too, in the person of Mr. Bliss and his freak show.
Yes.
But yes, the basic amorality and the sense of the theatrical that he would have used for the Ringmaster, he then instead incorporated by hybridizing it with a bit of Dickensian macabre in the person of the character that ultimately became the Shade.
Certainly, yeah, yep. And what they were able to pull off with some of the with the artwork too, and the effects that come out of the Shade, and bathing him in darkness while at the same time using just enough color to have that darkness almost leap out at times. Like, Tony Harris was a master at that.
Don't forget Wade von Grodbach. Yes, the inker.
Wade von Grodbach. Yes, there we go. Yes, I was actually just going to say his name, Murd, because yeah, it's just as much on him as it is anything else. Because I've seen Tony Harris inked by others, and it looks very, very different when Wade's not there to make that happen. So absolutely the case. Yep. So I mean, do you guys want to go into sort of the issue by issue story being told here, and unravel that a little bit for the listeners, whether they've read it or not, to entice them?
Of course.
I've always preferred doing the issue by issue approach.
By all means. All right. So which one of us wants to tackle the first couple here? Shane, you wanna go ahead and make the magic happen a little bit?
Well, yeah. Like we said at the beginning of the episode, you're really thrust into the action in the first 2 pages. You're seeing a Starman, and you know that he's David Knight, but I don't know that you really know who he is at this point. I don't think that David was ever mentioned or anything in any other medium when Ted was involved. Was he?
Oh, there's Murd.
Oh, excellent.
There he is.
Okay. I'm showing you a copy of the Starman, the late 80s, early 90s Will Payton Starman series. It's issue number 26. It was written by Roger Stern, art by Dave Hoover, and that is where David Knight actually came from.
Excellent.
It was a cover date of September 1990. This was while Ted Knight was still in limbo with the rest of the JSA, where he was put in the last days of the JSA special by Roy Thomas, and where he and the rest of the JSA had to cool their heels for 6 years, I think it added up.
Okay.
To.
Wow.
And I think Roger Stern wanted to acknowledge the provenance of the Starman name by pitting his Starman, Will Payton, against some bearer of the legacy of the original character. And since Ted Knight was unavailable, he invented hitherto unseen the son of that character, and that's where David Knight came from. It was explained that he had been in Europe
Ah,
Hanging out with Norman Osborn, I guess, for all that. And then he suddenly came back, and he was manipulated by his personal trainer, a guy named Andy Murphy, into staging this public duel of sorts with Will Payton for the sake of the Starman name. In the end, it turns out that Andy Murphy is actually the Mist, who had kind of a mental exerted some kind of hypnotic control over David Knight. And the whole thing was just a ploy for him to get his hands on the cosmic control belt, formerly worn by Sylvester Pemberton, and seen actually here at the very beginning of the Starman series as the Mist's son gets a hold of it.
yeah.
So yeah, this is pretty much the only place in this two-parter here, Starman Volume 1, at numbers 26 and 27.
And I have to tell you,
and
I've never read any of that Starman Volume 1. As much as I love this volume, I never went back and got the older ones for Volume 1.
I don't have very many issues of it myself, Shane, but it's kind of in my long-term to collect list because it's Roger Stern working with what's basically an original character in the DC universe. There are those who have fond memories of Will Payton and who were happy that Robinson wove him into the tapestry he's creating here.
Oh yeah,
series.
Yeah.
And he picked up David Knight, and at first, as far as Robinson was concerned, he was just, in his own words, a cipher to be killed. Just something a jumping on point.
Yeah.
A launching point for the rest of the series. He was the good son who willingly adopted the legacy, the mantle of Starman, and it's his murder that forces the black sheep's son, Jack. The guy who doesn't go in for all that underwear on the outside stuff.
Yeah.
As it kind of thrusts him into a position where a character who otherwise would never have adopted a superhero legacy to go ahead and do so, and the series takes off from there.
To put it in comparable language of the time, I wasn't even supposed to be here.
Right. Right.
If I may, I just want to indulge me. I want to read this page from the first issue. It's
Sure.
Jack entering his shop. I'll never grow tired of the smell. Every time I open this shop, every time I take my first day's breath at the place, breathe deep, drink it in. I'll never tire of it. The smell of old things.
Yeah.
I read that. I was like, oh, this is my series.
Yeah. There's almost no character in comics existence that I have ever more closely felt a kinship and relationship to than Jack Knight.
Yeah.
And everything that he goes through in the entire book from start to finish. And owning the shop, and that page in particular is one of those things, just like Chris, that makes you go, I know exactly what he's talking about. That's exactly how I feel about certain things when I walk into a shop, my comic room, whatever. It hits you right in the gut in the same way.
Well, and even the line here from one of the first issues, can't die not knowing beautiful things. Like oof, man, dialogue hitting you like with a punch right from the start.
Yeah, Jack's
Also,
internal is always very strong.
And I also really enjoy the fact that they throw Jack right into it when the Mist son comes to kill him.
Yeah.
It's a pretty brutal battle. I'm just looking at it again. And they establish that to give some believability, Jack does know martial arts. Otherwise, he never would have had a chance at all to survive this attack. But he still gets the crap kicked out of him.
Oh, yeah.
And which, is plausible because he's not a trained superhero and he barely gets out of there. He's bleeding. He's been beaten up. In the last page, like he's bleeding from the leg. He's spitting up blood, but he has the cosmic rod though.
Yeah.
Can I also point out how both children look like they're straight out of Beetlejuice, almost Lydia-esque. When you take a look at them, it's beautiful.
And the splash page of the Mist, where
he's holding the bottle, the glass of wine.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Through this first issue, you're really thrust into seeing David. All of a sudden, he's shot. You get a flashback of just a little bit before this, and I forgot when I reread this first issue. I forgot just how much Jack didn't want to be a part of this, and how much at odds he and his father were.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of remember, but to read it on the page, he's really harsh to not only David but his father's legacy, and his father gets quite pissed at him, orders him to go away, and give him some time. You shouldn't have said that, and then it's too late. He can't take any of it back before something happens to David. Then
Yeah. They included text from the letter column of Starman #0 in the omnibus.
Yep.
And there's two specific paragraphs that I wanted to read here. This is James Robinson's words, and these two point out to me. With Starman, however, we have a name and a Golden Age heritage that have been left pretty much untouched. People are familiar with the character and his powers and his green and red costume, and yet they're not. In fact, I'd brazenly hazard a guess that I developed the character of Ted Knight more within the pages of the Golden Age miniseries than was ever done before, and that's not saying much. But at the same time, his appearances in the Justice Society crossovers of yore, and the fact that although he was never a first-rung hero, his powers are far, far greater than those of the acrobatic masked men who comprised about half of the 1940 superhero roll call, have meant that people sort of know him. And that's, I think that says a lot right there of what he was going for with, going into the Knight history. And then to hark on the city, since we did mention that quite so much. In the course of this book, I intend to create this city, give it streets you recognize by the landmarks, give it a design sense all its own. Fortunately, I'm collaborating with Tony Harris, an artist who not only shares that vision, but has the visual talent and skill to bring off the architectural diversity we have in mind. We want the Opal City skyline to be so distinctive that you'll recognize it without a caption or any verbal indication of where you are. Starman's home. You'll have gathered it's a stylized place. But then again, I ask, who wants the everyday in a comic book?
Yeah.
Well, they certainly achieved that.
And you do get a sense of that when you see the skyline or certain scenes. It can be a bright city of hope, very stylized, like you said, Ian, like he says here. Just absolutely distinctive. You almost immediately know you're in Opal City whenever you see it.
Absolutely.
Yep. At least when you see it as drawn by Tony Harris.
Yeah.
Because there have been other comic books in which superheroes visit Jack Knight in Opal City, and under a less gifted pencil, it just kind of looks like an average city. But Tony Harris, gives it its personality. Yes. And it is worth mentioning that the very first line of the Starman series entirely on the first page of issue 0 is "There is a city." So we're introduced to the setting, to Opal City, which is a primary character of the series in its own right, before we're introduced to the human members of the cast.
Absolutely.
And I really felt it really was a character in the book, much more than what, say, like Metropolis and Gotham, when certain restarts were happening in the DC universe. Gosh, I forget when Metropolis was going under this renovation to be the city of tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Superman Y2K.
Yeah, and at the same time you had Gotham, and the articles were read about how they would be very two distinct cities, and you could feel them as a character in there, and there was some of that the first issue or two, but nothing like what you got out of Opal City in this book.
There have been attempts made to map out, do some like a superhero metropolitan cartography. Metropolis and Gotham ever since the end of the 80s, early 90s. Like Metropolis got neighborhoods like Hobbs Bay and Suicide Slum that had been established back in the 70s, I think, and same thing had been done for Gotham, but typically those attempts didn't last much longer than the creative team that put them into practice.
Right.
And that's why this is so effective, because you have one creator's vision through this entire series.
Yeah.
Again, we always talk about how some of those series we love most are the finite series where you have a consistent creative team throughout. And there you go again, right? That's one of the reasons why this is such a masterpiece.
Absolutely. Although I'll say my favorite Gotham is one with blimps in the sky. That's a take on Gotham that just makes it like perennial for me. Like I love that type of Gotham City.
Yeah. Through the tragedy of David's death, and subsequent attacks on everybody, including his father and the observatory, you get introduced to the Adair family, which again, new to this book,
Yep.
and extremely long heritage with Ted Knight. So much so that when anything happens, they come immediately to his defense, his protection, because of what he's done for the city and them, and their partnership throughout his career as Starman before David took over. An extensive family, all of them police officers, all of them always have been, and some absolutely wondrous things happen with this family throughout the entire series of the book.
Yes, they do.
Some amazing, some tragic, heart-wrenching. I can say these things over and over, and I know I will, but it really is true. It's an incredible cast of characters that get introduced here.
Yeah.
And Robinson does a really good job of introducing you to each one of them and giving them each a distinctive personality, and very easily explaining it without bogging the story down. And then you get to learn things later about all of them.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the Gordon family when you think about it, only way more nuanced. Because I mean, like, yeah, you've got James Gordon, and then you've got Barbara, but you don't know much about the wife. You don't know much about other members of the Gordon family for the most part. The O'Dares are just fixtures, and they're just as important as the superhero itself, because every superhero needs that supporting cast, and frankly, that's them. Period.
Yeah.
By the way, as a side note, how great are Jack's clothes?
Oh my God.
Like,
I
there's
can't
such-
tell you how often I tried to find bowling shirts or
Yeah, just
vintage
looking at
looking
this
things.
page, I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a fundamental aspect of his personality, and
Yeah.
the fact they took the time to like design a very distinct sartorial taste for him.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
The fact that
it speaks so much about who he is as a person. It's wonderful.
it varies from issue to issue and year
Yeah.
to year. Sometimes he'll have a goatee, sometimes he
Yeah.
won't. He's got
Yep.
tattoos. There haven't been that many superheroes prior to 1990.
No,
depicted
no.
with tattoos.
And do we know if was Jack Knight modeled after anybody in real life in terms of his look? Do we know?
Not that I know of or have ever
Okay.
read.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I have vague recollection of perhaps him being based upon some friends that Tony Harris knew, but that could be apocrypha for all I know. I just have vague recollection of him at least mentioning that, like, that people that he hung out with had this, sort of style, and that's kind of like the amalgam that he created there. But again, could be spitballing that out of my butt. I don't know.
And then in the actual issue number 1, the introduction of the Shade, the shadowy gentleman. Fantastic. Writing with his quill pen.
Oh my God.
Talking of models, James Robinson said that his personal mental model for the Shane was an English actor named Jonathan Pryce.
Okay.
I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure, looking at the art, though, that Tony Harris was thinking of Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, that
He
worked
found
too. Yep.
He found a way. That's what he did.
Can't go wrong with Goldblum.
Oh my God, yeah. And yeah, going back to as well, some of the shadowy demons that you see out of Shade, all right off the bat here in this first iteration, just beautiful.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, and I also just wanted to mention the dialogue near the end of the book, also, harkening back to being established and almost doing the I'm not supposed to be here thing again. I'm not a hero. This showed it. I don't think like one. I don't. And then going down on the bottom of the page, oh hell, it's a long time until day and it's light. I'm going back. He's already in.
Well, I mean, as we go through the saga, right? The father always basically acknowledges, like, I always really felt it was you who should take up the mantle. And a part of the reason why Ted was so disappointed in Jack, that he took a different path in his life, and then circumstances now put him where he is meant to be, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Instead, poor filial David had to step in and just die his inevitable death.
Yep.
Trying so much to be like his father. And, ironically, metatextually, that's the only reason David Knight existed, to be a legacy stand-in, a placeholder for Ted Knight to fight Will Payton back in 1990.
Yep. And then, but
Yeah, and that,
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No,
please.
just right before that last page you mentioned issue 1. The whole sequence of the Shade using his powers to their full horrifying effect with those thugs, and then those 6 panels of just darkness, essentially.
Letting your mind go wild.
Yeah, it's so well done. You're automatically enamored with this character because he's got this way about him that's so alluring, but he's also very frightening. And as Murd mentioned, he will take life really without hesitation if he deems it necessary. Yeah. And come on, you're always drawn to a character like that in fiction.
What Robinson said about how he arguably did more to develop Ted Knight in the Golden Age miniseries than had been done in 50 years prior to that. He may be being a little cheeky when he said that, but I think we can really, without fear of contradiction, say that he accomplished that with the Shade in just a few pages of musing and murdering there in issue 1 than had been done in 50 years before that.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
And Ian, going back to your initial point, if you look at issue 2, the first splash page, I am not Starman.
Yep. And that's where we get our iconic, costume.
Yep.
As he puts it together here. As I flip one more page back.
That first page is fantastic.
Watching him put the patch on and all that. Beautiful.
And having reasons for it on. Well, the star thing, that works. Astrology, not astronomy. Well, Dad might like that anywhere.
And the World War II anti-flare goggles. Come on.
Yeah. My box of Cracker Jack prizes for a badge that it says Law and Order, and it seems to fit.
Yeah, grabbing those goggles is the first hint we get that Jack Knight might actually have some not only have some aptitude for heroism, but might actually go on to surpass his father, because he muses to himself as he puts them on. Hey, these would be good up there in that night air.
Yeah,
it's dark. The wind gets in your eyes. I don't know why Dad never thought of this.
Yeah.
Instead, Ted just jumped into the sky without even wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it's Jack's. As Chris said, he's the kind of superhero who thinks of things that real people would think of. He's got an outsider's perspective on the whole superhero concept, and that proves to be his strength time and time again.
Murd, quick historical question: is the Mist from the Golden Age?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
Yes, he's a Golden Age villain who was brought back in the Silver and Bronze Ages, and is one of the more memorable villain characters of the era.
And was he always a Starman villain, or no?
That's where he began.
Okay.
He acted as part of the secret society of supervillains at one point. So he fought kind of the entire masked JLA and JSA in one of those Earth 1, Earth 2 crossovers in the early 80s.
Now the coloring too.
Yes, it was
Gregory Wright is
wow.
the colorist on these first couple of issues, and what a stunning page that he puts up here. And as much with the inking and the pencils, this would be nothing without the colors. The yellow and how much he makes all the different clothing that they're wearing be distinctive and stand out on top of that. Perfect.
Yep. We mentioned the splash page introducing the Mist in issue number 0 when he's talking to his children. Yeah, the yellow tones he uses for that. It's like the whole thing was printed on yellowed parchment. It's perfectly evocative of both age and the toxic miasma that the Mist constantly exudes around. Yeah. And the colors that. You're absolutely right, Ian. Their importance can't be overstated here.
Yeah.
Sometimes noirish, sometimes psychedelic, sometimes deco. And the flame effects that he does for various infernos and explosions. Particularly the scene when the Mist Sun perishes. Very memorable.
And introducing the Charity character right away, you get a sense that Opal City has this aspect to it that is not really what it seems, and maybe kind of have one foot in a supernatural or mystical realm, and it just adds so much more oomph to the weight of the city and what could be lurking there, both for good and for ill. So it's really exciting.
I also wonder how much Tony Harris was influenced by Batman the Animated Series, because that had already come out. like what, about a year or two before this, thereabouts, or
Yeah, it was 92. I think
okay.
the animated series premiered in 92.
Because especially with seeing this, I mean, this splash page here, later on in issue 2, um,
Oh
immediately.
yeah. Wow. Yep.
Immediately, my brain went to the Batcave in the animated series. Images like that you would see from from Bruce Timm, and that style all the time. And whether subconsciously or not, I think Tony Harris is definitely going to that well.
And then he gets the his staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And his choice of that odd, angular-shaped, rejected prototype of his father's. It suits.
After that, when they have when he claims the staff, and then Ted is in bed thinking about his son Jack and how he's taking up the mantle. I think it's a really important page because he's just thinking about the two sons and really that Jack is the one who really should be doing this.
That's why I named you Jack, a hero's name.
I looked in your eyes and I knew your destiny. Then and there, I looked into your baby face and I knew you'd be a hero.
Oh, iconic.
Yep. And it's sad too, because he also says, he talks about David. David wasn't a hero. He was an adoring son of the brave heart, but not, and then just ellipsis. But the David character is really sad because you barely get to know him. And you really get to know him through Jack, having this argument with him tragically right before he's murdered. And then, of course, as I know, one of Shane's favorite installments are hanging out with, what are they called? Not hanging out with David.
Talking with David.
Talking with David. And then you really start to get to know him.
Yeah.
And his frustrations and so well done.
I'll tell you what, the first time I read this part of the story, which was, months, if not years after I started reading the monthly series, once I started picking it up, when I read these parts about his father's thought of David and Jack, something that went through my head and has stuck with me. I relate it to the very first episode of Battlestar Galactica. You get to meet Zach. He's there just to give a little bit of oomph to the situation.
Yeah.
Zach gets blowed up real good, and Apollo is the hero son that takes the mission and goes forward with it, not reluctantly, but it was just funny to me in my head, my love of Battlestar Galactica, that I could see a parallel between Zach and Apollo in some ways, and Jack and David.
That was an awesome reference, and we should let people know we're talking about the 1978 Battlestar Galactica.
78.
And Zach was played by Rick Springfield.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. There was a Zach in the new. There was a Zach in the new Battlestar Galactica, but I'm totally referencing the first one.
Now with the third issue here, and harkening back, once again to how he may not have wanted to do it, but at one point when he was a kid, he certainly did. Seeing him with the X-ray specs, and one day I'm going to be just like Dad. And lo and behold, little did he know that was exactly going to be the case. And more. I
love how in that flashback Jack comes in. Look at the Viewmaster reel I got, Davey. Traded it for some comic books. Remember Viewmaster, Shane?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
James Robinson does. He collects them, among other things.
Oh, well, there you go.
And they were still pretty popular when my kids were little. They had a couple that they got for Christmas over time.
Yeah, they're still around. They're still around.
Are they really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's even digital versions of them where you can.
That just doesn't make any sense.
I know. Yeah.
you got to have the click. And try to focus to get the 3D effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Tactile as well as an optical pleasure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's actually one thing that they mentioned with the digital ones, and why they were never really that successful, is that they couldn't get the tactile button quite right to make it feel like the old school one, where trying to get the weight perfect and all that.
And if you didn't pull that sucker out, boy, you'd crinkle that film.
Oh yeah.
The battle between Jack and the Mist's son, I almost forgot how, first of all, how extensive it is. Like it takes up a large part of the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really harsh. Like they're really trying to kill each other. I also love how that they work in flashbacks of Jack recalling when he and his brother were kids and they would actually do things together and how they were kind of came apart. And
Yeah.
the narrative pace here is masterful.
And
in this issue.
It drives Jack to, at this point, seek revenge. He's not out to be a hero. He's not out really to save a city. He's out to get revenge for taking his brother before he could reconcile things, in my mind.
And he says, and secondly, I may not have liked my brother, but I loved him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and the fact that we get the page that we do with that, but I loved him. Like, talk about a striking image.
You see, this is what I was talking about when I said Greg Wright's flame effects.
Yeah. Well done, Murd.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, so cool. Flame on in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also then Jack's reflection here. My brother, how I felt about his death and him, all those memories, and I still don't know. Yet to grieve, to feel much of anything. What isn't a lie? I'll never kill again, never. My brother's murder, the once only time. So right there, like the way Robinson crafts those caption boxes, like his thoughts are disjointed because he can't really get a handle on how did I really feel about my brother, right? I have all these thoughts going on inside me as I'm in this life or death battle with this. The writing is just, it's outstanding.
Yeah. Like, as I said before, his Jack internal monologues are very strong.
Yeah.
Just the reason you state there, Chris. Because it is disjointed. It's just like half-formed thoughts and memories. It's a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's more like the kind of thing that would probably flip through a real person's mind during a superhuman fight, as opposed to the fully scripted soliloquies that we tend to get in other comics.
Yeah.
And then the epilogues for this issue.
Those epilogues.
Oh my God, yeah.
That first epilogue, man, you flip that page after seeing the cosmic geek in the bottom right-hand corner, and you flip it and go, ooh, that's interesting.
Yep. Our first inklings that the Starman legacy is going to go beyond the Knight family in this series.
Yeah.
And indeed it does. These two legacies in chains, like hidden and captive royalty in an old Ruritanian novel.
Yeah.
and it showed just how much James Robinson had to tell, because sometimes you get to like issue 4 or 5 of a series and you're not even sure if the person writing it knows exactly where they're going in 18 issues. I'm pretty sure James,
or the entire TV series of Lost.
or the entire TV series of Lost. Yes, thank you.
Now stop. I enjoyed that.
I know. Hey, Damon. You want a good Damon Lindelof series? Watch The Leftovers or Watchmen.
I know you keep telling me that.
Yep. But this just said to me that James Robinson knew exactly where he was going.
Oh yeah.
Whether DC was going to give him the the time to do so or not, he knew exactly where he was going.
Well, heck, just go back to issue number 2 when Jack stumbled into Charity's fortune teller shop.
Yeah. And all the stuff she
reads him that whole list of things that's going to happen to him in the near future, and that's foreshadowing is what that is. And she mentions things that would ultimately not happen to Jack for years down the road. So I think it's safe to say, as you said, Ian, Robinson probably had at least the first year and a half tightly planned out. But I would guess that as the series proved popular and sales increased, he realized that he had the luxury of maybe dilating his timetable a little bit and spreading things out. And really just putting in a few other stories that he would like to tell, really take his time about things and just let his end game breathe a little and push it just a few years further down the line.
Yep.
Look at in issue 4 that spread of the city. Oh
yeah.
Holy mackerel.
Yep.
God. It's like you said, it's truly a character. It's a vital character in the story. I mean,
yep. Absolutely. And right before that too, just mentioning what Murd said about incorporating in Will Payton and how happy people were. Like, yeah, well now we get to see exactly what happened there. So it's a little bit of everything for all the stuff, for all the Star.
And to draw a parallel from my own reading life, so the reason why I hold this series and Priest Black Panther on this pinnacle for me is that they both do something similar. They take the history of their respective characters and they incorporate all of that history, even the stuff that you didn't think they could possibly pull it off, and they do.
Mhm.
And they do it reverently, and they make it work, and they make it fresh and dynamic and new. This is again, these are master classes right here.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, I love the next page, Jack on the phone bartering for various like junk shop products. It's
trying
so
to recoup
well
his
done.
stock after his stuff was destroyed. So you can sympathize with that, can't you, Chris?
More than once.
Yeah.
Like Robinson is very much. I mean, I don't know if you ever owned a store, but he's very much in that. He's in that world of like hunting stuff down and scavenging. Like he just has it down to a T here.
Yeah, and then further along, I mean, you mentioned the previous splash page of Opal,
Yes.
and oof.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Pages
Man, oh
10 and
man.
11 of that issue.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful splash page, and the prose, my goodness. There are maybe a couple of drawbacks to Robinson's dialogue here and there, but his descriptive prose is just beautifully evocative. And on this page, where he's talking about the soundscape, just the sensory imagery he employs to describe Opal City in terms of the sounds that can be heard downtown on these two pages. I mean, he tends to the mannered and pretentious at times, but when he doesn't lay it on too thick or spread it too thin, his prose is just gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
And sadly, you don't see this style of writing in comics anymore. The captions, it's gone.
And there's something like when we talked about when Jack first walks into a shop and describes what he smells that he'll never get rid of it. There's times when you read stuff like this, you can hear it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can
absolutely
feel the cold air. Like if you're just dedicated and intensely reading and into it, you can just let yourself go in and be absorbed by it.
Well,
it just waves over top of you.
I'll tell you, it reminds me of Frank Miller's Sin City in that way. The way that he would describe, the city and then go into, 4 pages of dialogue, explaining it all and getting that, noir feel and sensitive.
Yeah. Sin City at its best was just a loving tribute to noir sensibilities.
Certainly.
So,
yep.
How about in the next couple of pages, every time Jack and the Shade have conversations, it's some of the most engaging comics you're ever going to read, because their dynamic because they develop their relationship through the entire series.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Shane, please.
Well, at this point, there's no ifs, ands, or buts from Jack's perspective. This is a villain. He does not know anything that we even know up to this point about the Shade.
Yeah.
And just, I've been around a while, as I hope you will too. Opal City's champion, Starman. Remember, Jack, you're the only person in the city up to the task. So right from the get-go, he's trying to, sort of nurture and encourage Jack to take on the role of the champion of the city. How about if you look at the page, I'm looking at the page where he's talking to him and he says that to him, and then you watch the Shade, look at the art. I don't have a page number, where he merges into the shadows as he takes his leave of him. And look at Wright's coloring, as you guys noted.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Absolutely stunning.
Yep. I believe that was page 16.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful. This is the issue. This is the issue with the Hawaiian shirt, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah. Okay.
This was my point of no return with this series. Yes, and this cursed artifact, this kind of Friday the 13th, the series type.
Yeah.
And it's resolved so peacefully. I mean, he doesn't even need to fight the agent that's dispatched to retrieve it. He's just like, okay, you can buy it from me. Just go through those. I got a bunch of shirts in the back. You just go through them. I don't even want to see it. Just buy it for your boss and get out of here.
Hey, you don't want the shirt? A gateway to heaven to your boss? That might sound like a good time. Not me. And I love those sunglasses that the agent is wearing. Like it's almost transmetropolitan.
Jack didn't try to make him an offer for them.
Yeah, right.
I love Ted's parting phone call. That's the thing, Jack, my boy. I didn't want to tell you earlier when we struck our deal that you play the hero, but the weirdness finds you.
Yes.
Like it or not. And then Shane, in issue 5, I think you should hold forth on this.
Oh, well, first, you never know what to expect with it. You see the cover and you see what looks like David battling
Yeah.
Jack, but Jack kind of looks skeletonish to me.
Yep.
He looks really
Like
worse
a
for the
zombie
wear.
of some kind. Yeah.
But then you start getting into the issue and you realize that Jack's dealing with something very unique, very special.
Mhm.
And, Jack doesn't even know what to make of it at first. Is it a dream? Is it not? Is it real?
Yeah.
But throughout it, you really get not only the sense of just how brotherly they are, but you can also get towards the end, you get David really encouraging Jack
Mhm.
and really saying, well, you know what, we can do it if you want. How about same time next year? And it just pulls at your heart that he got a chance to talk to his brother, and whether he actually believes it or not yet, he will. And it becomes such a pivotal uh, a pivotal structure for him to build his personality on, for his heroship, for his confidence.
Yeah.
That he can have these discussions David for years.
And plus, Jack has the moment where he's, I'm sorry you're dead, David. We not have lived well together, but I never wanted you dead.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to tell you that.
It's an important first step.
Oh, yeah.
As Chris was mentioning during the Jack's internal monologue during the fight with the Mist Sun, he's trying to suss through his confused, conflicting feelings for his brother, and he never really reaches a conclusion there. So this is Robinson's way of, over a period of years, since this was an annual thing throughout the whole run of the series.
Yep.
It's basically a series of supernatural family therapy sessions for the Night Brothers. Every year, a different setting, a different themed experience, and a different breakthrough for the two of them as they continue to work through their feelings for each other, one alive, one dead. And it's almost like they're going, each one is a different stage of grieving. And this one, anger, because most of it is like a fight scene. But by the end of it, they've at least identified what their major sticking points with each other is. Jack's emotional baggage for David is guilt, and David's baggage for Jack is jealousy, resentment, and also regret that he didn't live his life for himself the way Jack has, that he didn't establish an identity for himself. He envies Jack for having been his own man, whereas David literally and metatextually was just trying to be his father, Ted, because back in 1990, that's what he was created to be, just a stand-in for Ted. But thanks to James Robinson and his increasing interest in this character, whom at first he thought was just a cipher to be killed, a convenient death to launch the series on its way, he eventually convinced himself, hey, I can do something with this character. I'm going to give myself more opportunities to do it. And, the Night Brothers in their universe and we, the readers in our universe, are all the richer for it.
There's this great interaction, these two bubbles. You have, I don't know page numbers. That's one thing this omnibus is bad at, is page numbers. But you're at a point where they're done fighting and David's saying to Jack, I never hated you, Jackie. You thought I did, but no, it wasn't like that at all. I envied you. Then you have Jack, who we, the readers, would have, I don't know, we would have noticed or guessed this at this point. Me, but you were like Dad. You were the scientific, intelligent one. You had purpose. Really showing that they really wanted to be each other and never talked about it. And if they would have, how much richer their lives could have been and how much easier it could have been if they would have just talked back then. But like you said, Adam, they at least get to do that now.
And look at the penultimate page after David leaves in that majestic, going, into the heavens. Look at this again, mastery of Harris. Look at Jack's face. They color his eyes, and he has this smile.
Yeah.
And you see he's taking the first step towards achieving, a sense of peace about his brother's place in his life and vice versa. The art is just stunning.
And going back to the coloring as well. I mean, this issue is a master class in appropriate color when needed. It feels almost like Pleasantville in the way that they've set it up, where focusing on color and black and white, and the black and white sequences, like It's a Wonderful Life comes to mind, old Hitchcock's Twilight Zone, like all that's being evoked with this, and just the familial essence of it all is just nothing compares.
Well, and I missed you have that great interaction between them when they first stop fighting and Jack really thinks he killed David. He's like, no, 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 not again, not again. It's like always such a sucker, Jack.
Like,
Now, issue 6. The Shades Journal. What more needs to be said?
yes, the first times past.
Ah,
And
God.
a complete departure pencils wise as well.
Yeah.
As you get a very, very different style.
Teddy Christensen.
Yeah. Yep. Teddy Christensen in this. But talk about, like I mentioned before, evoking an animated style. And this is like, it's like I turned the channel and I went to a different animated series. Like that's what this feels like to me. And just all I'd say the facial expressions that throughout this issue are what drive me the most, because like those wry smiles you get from Shade
Well put.
are just so on point.
How about the splash pages when he goes to the circus and he's in the shadows, touching his top hat, the brim? Oh, amazing.
Well, to me, a lot of this is a much more simplistic art to invoke the simpler times that we're looking at. The past.
But at the same time, I agree with you, Shane, but I'm in the 2-page spread where he unleashes his, I don't know if you call them demons. Or they're part of him, but that art is absolutely stunning. It almost has a Sienkiewicz feel to it.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Perfect description. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's frightening. Like, this is not, your friendly neighborhood hero. Like, this is something all the more complicated.
It's not even your ambiguous hero you get out of the first couple issues when
Actually,
Shade appears.
Now that I think about it, it's almost Sienkiewicz meets Dali. Like, because some of the some of the like demons that are here are just like they very much remind me of like that warped essence that you get from a Salvador Dali painting.
Yep, the two shadow face sharing a single mouth there up towards the top.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That seems like something Dali would have come up with.
Now, Ian, if you're showing the page where the creatures are coming out of Shade, you go 2 pages past that, and you get that wonderfully shaded face with the eyes white, and the whole facial expression of just, I don't know, discontent, very, very, very serious Shade.
Yeah. Oh, he's giving you some real Shade there. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Living up to his name in many different ways. But yeah, you're right. That stern look on his face, like you are messing with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the that's it, Lune, make a stand, bravo! Like, that's classic, the Shade as like, essentially taunting his opponents, and that sort of that elegance that he brings to the table as well. Plus he's hanging out with Oscar Wilde.
Yeah. There's another image a few pages later on when all the fighting and slaughtering is done, and we just get this image of the girl that the Shade was sent to rescue, standing there looking very lost, alone, helpless, and half naked on a catwalk over a scene of total carnage. The entire troop, basically, Loon, last among them, has been slaughtered, and they're all piled on and around a giant prop devil's head in the backstage area of the theater.
And the best part is the Shade's reflection. Looking back in these days since, I feel perhaps that killing the entire troop was a bit extreme, although perhaps not.
And that all of these are from the journals too. Like it's such a terrific framing device to have, Jack reading through it, and that's the issue that this is. I love when we get journal readings in comics, and this is just harkens to that history beautifully.
Yeah, and it gives Robinson an excuse to dabble in straight prose every once in a while too.
Certainly,
always enjoyable. But yeah, this is the Shade. We're seeing here that the Shade is Gothic literature personified, and this is Robinson a chance to show us to what extent that is true.
Yep.
And And then that panel I was just describing by Christensen really brings that about too. It's very much a Gothic image. It's kind of like a 19th century engraving.
Yeah.
And speaking
Go
of
ahead.
which, um, d- did any comic have better covers than this?
No.
The answer is no, because
Not in the
every
90s.
yeah, absolutely. Like maybe Fables. Like Fables may be the only comic that comes close.
Sandman had some tremendous covers.
Sandman had some terrific covers as well.
Yeah.
But like for me, like the different art styles utilized throughout are what makes this for me. And yeah, everything is just so unique.
But even those other two series are very particular for their craft of storytelling too, which is unique to, I would say, those three books. When you Starman, Sandman, and Fables, they tell a very different story than most comics at that time were telling, at least mainstream comics.
Absolutely.
I always think that cover, the way Jack is drawn, I don't know why, he looks like a short-haired Parker Stevens. The Hardy Boys. It just, that's who he looks like to me. I don't know why.
No, fair enough.
See, Shane, now you took me back. I'm like a kid watching the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew Hour, and the classic '70s singer-songwriter. I think it was Paul Williams. Is singing in one of the episodes. Jeez, man.
Now, Chris, I immediately thought of you at Ides when you open up issue 7 and you get
the quest.
Yeah, you're in Turk County, where God help me, the bargains are to be found.
Yeah.
Jack.
And what's interesting is this is the first issue where we're taking him out of Opal. There's no way this is Maryland, by the way. Whatever editor thought that was an idiot is an idiot. Like, there's no way.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
Yep.
But and then he ends up at a circus. Like,
yep.
And if you look carefully at pages 4 and 5 there, when he arrives at the circus, you can see little cameos by the entire creative team of Starman.
Oh, look at that.
Rolling the crowd.
I don't know if I ever noticed that.
Is Robinson the guy in the green hat with the tattoos?
I'm not entirely sure as to who's who.
Okay.
The ones that I'm sure of, as Jack is going through the entranceway, the two guys standing there, the guy with the mustache and the Asian guy. The Asian guy is assistant editor Chuck Kim, and the guy with the mustache and the DC button, that's Goodwin.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's definitely Archie Goodwin. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. I suspect the guy with the hat is Tony Harris. I think Robinson might be the guy in the brown shirt in the
okay,
all the way.
The glasses.
I think you're right, because now when I think about Airboy, and Ian, have you read Airboy?
Not yet. I own it, but I haven't actually gotten to it yet.
That's mandatory, sir.
Fair enough.
That's definitely Rob Robinson's portrayed in Airboy too. That's definitely him. Murd's right.
And here we are. One of our first epilogues. Pays off in a way.
Yeah.
Yep. As we get more Starman on Starman action, and it's just going to go from here.
The page layouts in this issue are particularly compelling.
Oh yeah.
Just the way they use panels, other characters overlapping different panels. It's really striking artwork. God,
and it almost harkens to when Hal Jordan recreated his Lost City. Right at the beginning of Emerald Twilight, where with the green hues that are used, very much what I think of.
Yeah, that sequence when McCall mind melds with him for a moment, and yeah, that's cool psychedelic visuals there. There's even a recreation of the cover of McCall's first appearance in first issue special number 12 back in 70.
Tremendous, Murd.
Is that in the middle of the second page there with the ship?
Yes, where the ship is shooting a beam at him and he's recoiling from it. And he's disco dancing at the bottom of that same page.
Well, and as we'll learn, later on in the series, that happened a lot for a while there.
I love a few pages later when Jack is besieged by all the carnival freaks,
That's almost Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah,
level
it
right
really
there.
is. It's tremendous.
Yes, it's a good
Yeah.
call.
Fish
And yet
boy.
I love that through this issue and the next, he ends up freeing them and befriending them. And even a little bit of hanky panky.
Yes, there'll be hanky
Intimate
panky with
one of them,
Tentacle
yes.
Woman.
Octavia.
I like the first couple of pages of this issue before he even gets to the circus, when he's just kind of driving around Turk County, you know. And Robinson is giving us the lay of the land, describing this Southern Gothic landscape through which Jack must travel, you know, to make his finds. And there's some moments of real horror encountered in those couple of pages.
Absolutely.
I love that he's in a like a MASH 407 kind of looking vehicle.
His Starmobile is an old decommissioned military ambulance. That's perfect.
What about your mom? She's dead. May she burn in the darkest pit of Satan's flames.
Oh, okay.
You got a box you can put this in?
Tremendous.
Which if any of you have ever watched many of the variety of picker shows out there, some of that's kind of true.
and boy, oh boy, I really didn't think I'd be saying these words on this episode here, but Tony Harris sure does know how to draw a tentacle woman. Like
Yeah.
That's
He really does.
that's something else right there. Reminds me of when Jean Grey randomly had tentacles in that one episode, in that one issue of X-Men from that.
Well, look at the cover of issue 8, for Pete's sake.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. Just before issue 8, 2 pages back, you get a vision of the pirate. Just a
Yes.
little inkling of more to come.
One of those DC historical period fiction characters that Robinson likes to adopt and weave into his narrative, just to give it an even greater
Shane,
sense of history.
I'm sorry, Murd. Shane, how great is, for in issue 8, the opening splash page, his pose with the staff?
Oh yeah.
It's iconic. It's so well done. Yeah, Tentacle Woman.
and seeing him use his goggles to great effect in this issue as well. You know, like those are getting some good use. And whenever anybody in a comic book or an animated series winds up at a circus, it's just not going to go well.
You're going to get hypnotized and robbed.
Yep. I'm thinking of the classic Claremont Byrne X-Men issues with Mesmero.
Oh, yes.
Circus.
Yes. Or anything involving arcade. Like,
yep.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Well, go ahead, Murd. Go ahead, Shane. I'm sorry.
I like when after Jack's using his goggles and you flip the page, you get this little interlude.
Oh, that's what I was
more
going to talk about.
things to come.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, just it's like I really enjoy this story, but what makes it all the more compelling is these interludes, because again, you're exploring that O'Dare is, he's a corrupt cop, but there are clearly going to be consequences for what's going on in his life.
Yeah.
Right. Because his life is not entirely his own.
No. And just the history they show you there is so, I mean, I'm thinking when I read this the first time, I'm like, oh, I just went from to my rack in my shop, from trade to trade to trade, because I just wanted to know, where was all this going to go?
Yeah.
Thrilling. And Shane, I think, is it an annual down the road where they really go into the Old West history? Is that
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. It's either
amazing.
that or just another times past,
Okay,
but I'm pretty sure it's an annual.
I think it was an annual too, because I'm trying to think of where that was collected in the omnibuses. I almost said omnibuy, but yeah, you're welcome, Murd. I did it just for you. Omnibuses. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was an annual. I think you're right about that, Shane.
Yeah, there was a series of annuals called Pulp Heroes that they did.
Yes, that's right.
96 or 7, and then that's probably when it was. Yeah, they also And before that, they did a Legends of the Dead Earth series of annuals, and the Starman participated in that, and that's where we got Robinson's take on the Prince Gavin Starman of the early 80s,
Ah,
Yes.
right.
the Levitz Ditko Starman.
And I love the Twilight's interlude that, a poster comes to life, an innocent is taken.
Yes.
Annual 2 was in 1996 and was Pulp Heroes, but it
Okay.
looks more like a young romance one.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
let me keep going.
That's okay. I'm going to reread all these anyway.
Well, while you're looking into that, Shane, I'll just point out, when Mikhail and Jack's powers combined, I cannot hear anything other than Vincent Price. With, why hast thou forsaken me?
Cool, but what a drama queen. Thought he'd never go.
Perfect casting choice, Ian.
Beautiful. I've also been saying beautiful way too much this episode. Apologies to all listeners. It seems to be the word I'm stuck on.
If they know the source material, Ian, they'll understand why that's the word stuck in your mind.
Yes, exactly.
It may have been issue 54 from 1999, the Scalp Hunter years.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yep.
Times past issue.
Yep. That's it.
Do we see any of these other circus guys again after this, Shane, other than Mikhail?
I think they come back around towards the end to help in some way, I want to say.
Okay. Yeah, but I kind of thought so myself, but I wasn't 100% on that. Yep. And then they're free by the end of the issue, and we're certainly going to get a lot more Mikhail to come.
And then issue 9 starts with I love him discussing his tryst with Octavia. Beautiful panel, like the jacket and the boots.
Yeah.
I had those boots, by the way.
What a coincidence that a tentacle woman's name is Octavia. By the way, it's that's comic books for you, ladies and gentlemen. Comic books. What's your name? Otto Octavius? No, seriously. What's your name?
This issue also, talking about issue 9, I love when Jack goes to Ted's observatory. They have a wonderful exchange that's quite lengthy.
Oh yes, about that shirt.
And this is why the book is great, because they devote so much time to father and son working through their relationship and misunderstand. Like, it's pages. Like it's come on.
Yeah, it's, you see the shirt on the one page, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages later.
I appreciate the very obvious Justice Society of America icon in the back there, that historic logo for the JSA.
Yeah,
makes me a happy camper.
That's on my sweatshirt.
Nice.
Now I forgot. Did the JSA book come out
after this?
After this, right? Okay.
Yeah.
1999, I think, is when that
Okay.
started.
So one could argue that Robinson really laid the groundwork for that book to be returned. Then,
yeah, he did. He was partner writers with it at first.
Right. That's right. Okay.
Yes,
and then
David S. Goyer, I think.
Yep, and then Jack was part of it only for a few issues. Right. I wanted him to be part of it much longer, and that just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about this Ragdoll issue just because, with Secret Six and everything, and the legacy Ragdoll and just how much Gail Simone plays with that. I'd kind of, again, completely forgotten about this particular issue of Starman here and just how important Ragdoll plays into that.
And I love just it's horrifying when the police officer is consumed by the Lord of the Flies poster, which is then just, wrapped up by this mysterious figure. And then a few pages later, the fact that Jack, anywhere he goes, will try to bargain. Been buying a cup of coffee from a street vendor. 95 cents, $1.07.
Yeah.
A cup of coffee for $1.07. Can I take that, please?
Yeah. Kind of like when I was a pump jockey at a gas station, 99 cents in 1990 for a gallon of gas.
But
That
he's
makes you sound
he's the
old.
consummate like hustler. Like it's fantastic. What a great page. Shane, do you own any Starman original art?
Funny you should say that. I do.
I wondered if you.
I have one page.
Ah,
It's all I wanted. It is from my favorite issue.
really?
Do not read the dialogue in case for spoilers.
Mhm.
Okay. What issue is that? I can't. Really tell.
73.
Oh wow.
Wow.
And
Where
it
did you get
has,
that?
I got it at PhillyCon. Good heavens. I could look at what year. I have it written
That's
down
okay.
somewhere.
I mean, many years ago, obviously.
I want to say I paid 100 for it, maybe something like that.
Hey, it's well worth it. Not bad at all.
I usually
Absolutely.
don't talk price, but that was a really good price back then.
Plus, it's got word balloons on it. Come on.
Oh yeah, it's got
Awesome.
actual word balloons.
Yeah.
It has Jack. It has the observatory, his cosmic staff. It's got Phantom Lee. Well, I don't want to say too much more.
Yeah. I'm
It's
surprised you
got a lot
haven't
of
framed it. I'm
characters.
surprised you haven't framed that.
Yeah, I have a couple framed above here, but I have a portfolio that I have
Ah,
my art in. I don't own a lot of art. I mean, it's just one portfolio. It's actually that same convention, totally off topic. There's a Jamal Eigel Firestorm page.
Ooh.
I
see,
got off him.
those are the days where you could actually afford art.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where it wasn't
And
cost prohibitive.
that's a
Oh.
great transformation page
Yeah.
for Firestorm. Just
Yeah.
phenomenal.
How much did that black costume Spider-Man go for? Was it 2 million or something
3
like
million,
that?
something like
3
that.
3 million. Right.
What was this now?
The very first full
Black
body
suit.
page black suit Spidey
Okay.
From Secret
Sure,
Wars.
sure.
Wars
Yeah, yeah.
was sold for $3 million.
Yeah.
3 million?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yes.
Or was it 3 million? Because there was a G.I. Joe issue 21 cover that sold. Maybe that was what was 3 million. There were two
Maybe.
auctions in that same week. That were just-
I know it was definitely a couple mil because Brian Pants posted about it on the super group
Yep.
and it was basically like, what?
Yep. I think it was 3 million and possibly a little more than that.
Okay.
so
yeah.
then maybe the G.I. Joe cover was like 300,000 then.
That's possible.
Yeah.
I don't own any original art, but I do have a sketch that I got from Steve Bryant back in the day of Jack Knight Starman,
Nice.
and it was stunning then, and it's stunning now. So very.
I should have dug out. I tried to dig some of this stuff out. I have one more thing to show then, related to these early issues. I should have dug out. I have a Dave Wachter print that he did that I picked up at one convention. I
Mhm.
have an Adam and Comfort Starman print that I picked up maybe when they were at one of the super shows.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got some Starman stuff that I always did want to hang up. I do have later in the series, there is a collage of covers that form one picture, and it's a very square poster. And I have that, and I had it up at the old house for many years, but I didn't put it up here yet.
It was it was 3.3 million that black costume reveal
Jeez,
sold for.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely outrageous. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I hope at least a little bit of it goes to Zach because that
Yeah.
that would be
God.
nice.
Be nice.
Yeah.
What I like, jumping back to the issue, what I like in the latter part of this issue, it's transitional. They're addressing where certain characters are.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
O'Dare with his corruption, the Miss daughter going in a very bad place, and I love the last page of Jack in repose. And he's got he's surrounded by movies. It's videotapes. How charming.
Yeah.
1995.
Books he's reading, and he's just relaxing.
He's eating anchovy pizza.
Yep.
Man after my own taste buds.
And then it says, in 43 seconds, the phone will ring with news of Nash's escape. In an hour, the Shade will pay Jack a visit with concerns of his own. But for now, when Jack will wish he could jump into his TV screen and ride away with Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
A lot of
And you look at
foreshadowing going on.
Yeah. And then you look at the cover and yet another reinterpretation of a classic villain.
Yes, for cover number 10. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. And having Nash escape at the end of the issue previous, obviously we're certainly see not the last of him, and it's gonna go bad.
And just the opening again, classic Jack Shade interplay.
Yeah.
I'm not your trained monkey boy. You need a favor, go find a friend. for the last time, I am not your amigo, amigo. You got that? And the Shade's always very calm and elegant in his response. Totally composed.
Yeah.
Did you know that that Oscar Wilde wrote fiction about that this very real immortal? The portrait of Dorian Gray.
I think somebody scolded Robinson for that in the letters pages because it's the picture of Dorian Gray.
Ah, fair enough.
A little factual errors he sometimes committed.
Yeah.
I act merely as herald to the threat you will ultimately have to face.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well,
As
and here,
enjoyable
go ahead.
as enjoyable as Robinson's dialogue often is, it's always something a little bit other than naturalistic. It reads kind of like a mashup of Victorian prose, hard-boiled pulp detective lingo, art movie dialogue, and beat poetry.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like your typical superhero comic dialogue, but it also
Yeah.
doesn't sound very much like the way real people talk to each other.
Which is how I felt. I just watched a 80th anniversary screening of Casablanca at the theater. They had a Fathom Events for it, and that's where my brain goes with a lot of the dialogue of this, like Bogart era movies, lines that sound great, but no one would actually say in real life.
I'm going to see that
Indeed.
next month in New Jersey at the State Theater with the New Jersey Symphony playing the music
Oh,
as
wow.
we watch the
Oh
movie.
my God, that
Wow.
sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So that's if I had to pick a favorite movie of all time, it's that movie.
Well,
So-
I raised a glass to pants because when I went to see this at the College Point movie theater, I passed a completely abandoned Toys R Us with the signage still up.
Oh,
And-
That's where it was.
Yes.
The ghost you visited.
Exactly. The ghost I visited as I posted to Facebook. Again, fully formed Toys R Us with the sign still up and the Gregory welcome at the front.
Jeffrey.
Yes, Jeffrey. Thank you. Gregory's his cousin from New Jersey. But yeah, no, it was sad just seeing that. Gorgeous theater though at College Point. Recently renovated. Very, very nice.
to go back to again, pages of them talking.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, and it's gripping. Like, and notice how they use the coffee cups as like a kind of guide you through these scenes as they're drinking. Just tremendous sequential artwork.
Yep.
And then Michael knows Teddy Pendergrass.
First English words out of his mouth in a decade and a half, and it's a piece of 70s pop culture.
Yep.
Of course. Yep.
Right on.
And let's focus on the introduction of Sadie Falk,
Yes.
as played by Paula
Yeah.
Poundstone.
Yes, this is the second sour little meet cute that the two of them have together. He ran into her at the freak show too.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't really endear the character to me, and I tend to like her even less later on when Robinson tries to tell us that she's actually Will Payton's sister, Jane Payton.
Hmm.
And, as I said before, I haven't read very many issues of the Will Payton Starman series, but I've read enough to know that these two are definitely not the same person.
Yeah.
Doesn't Jack get it together with her later?
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Matter of
Okay.
fact, it comes to light that she weaseled her way into his life deliberately
right.
to try to get him to go into outer space and find
And
her
that
brother.
was an annual story. I think that was an annual. That
Yeah.
That
whole
could be the
revelation.
young romance pulp thing that
Yeah,
Shane.
I think you're right, Murd.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's down the road. Yeah, look
Now-
at her outfit. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. Again, Paula Poundstone. Like that's 100%. Like I've seen her on stage wearing that exact same outfit.
I think he was probably thinking more of Katharine Hepburn, though.
Fair. So I guess,
with the haircut, I think Murd's right on point with that. Actually,
Yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
point, Murd.
well,
Very
now I
good
know.
point.
Now I know where Paula Poundstone got her stylist from. Then.
Right.
A few pages later, sweet son of a.
As Jack falls for a pretty face, whom he doesn't even see. That's a heck of a thing. He goes in search of Solomon Grundy down the sewers because Jade, a fellow superhero brat, calls him
Yep.
up and asks him for a favor. Which leads me to think, Shane, To the best of your recollection, later in the series, do we ever get any flashbacks to Jack's childhood where he has like play dates with
I
other
don't
kids of
think so. No, I don't recall anything like that. There's no times past because the times past are more specific to other characters in Opal City's past.
Hmm.
Talking with David is them grown up. I really don't remember any flashbacks with them as kids.
Yeah. It stands to reason he would have like at least met Hector Hall or one of the
Yeah.
other JSA's kids at sometime or another if the group ever got together for barbecues or something.
I'm sure he probably has. I mean, yeah, that you would think too, considering James Robinson, wrote JSA for a little while as well, that he would have wanted to maybe build that that bit, but never got there.
I think he and Rick Tyler would have gotten along pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it's very impressive that Jack actually survives combating Solomon Grundy.
well, and that leads me to my question: what do you think of Incredible Hulk Solomon Grundy? Because that's essentially the version of the character that we get here. One that rages out Hulk style, but in reality is the child Hulk from the olden for the older comics.
If anything, he's even more childlike and vulnerable than the child fear-based savage Hulk.
Yeah.
But this, and eventually Robinson does build this up too, which is another one of the really good ideas, one of the really fresh takes he has on old Golden Age concepts, is that Solomon Grundy has died multiple times over the years, and every time the Green or whatever regenerates him and thrusts him back into reality, he's a different person and a different personality. And this, kind of benevolent Grundy, who becomes like this big, sweet old Boo Radley kind of figure that hangs around his Ted Knight's lab for several issues, or for several years worth of this series. He's just the latest in a line of Grundys. He's just the most pleasant and personable Grundy we've seen yet. And that's to your point, Chris, this is probably the main reason why Jack does survive this clash with Grundy, because it's a Grundy that doesn't really want to fight. He just wants to be, Hulk Grundy want to be left alone.
He just wants to eat. He wants to eat frogs.
He wants to eat frogs. Yes.
And I love the closing page of the new Mist.
Yes,
again the coloring. Oh.
Yeah. And also going with my casting, the Mist as played by B.B. Newirth.
Good call.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. This is like Chicago B.B. Newirth.
Oh, definitely, and all that jazz.
So, the last issue we're going to cover is pivotal.
Well, real quick, when you after you flip
ahead.
the page to the Mist, I absolutely love that page where you get little blocks of every character.
Wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Everyone will have a role
Opal
to play. Yep.
Yeah.
Even one or two we haven't seen yet, like the new and improved Dr. Phosphorus.
Good point there, Murd. Yep. Ooh, and the painted cover 211 with all the JSA characters on there. Woo-hoo. Stunning.
And then we have Matt Smith art. And again, I like when they do these flashbacks, they change the art style. I think that's very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a Avon Oming style here, I'd say.
I don't think Avon Oming was well known yet as an artist at this point.
Yeah. Not at this point, no, but I more comparable moose pencil wise, I'd say to him.
Well, the 2-page spread of the 5 heroes gathering at the table with the one lamp. Beautiful.
Oh yeah. Yep, that's really like that could go on a wall right there. Like it's a
and to go back to your earlier point, Ian. So they're taking tried and true Golden Age characters, the essence of it, and then they're putting them into a very dark circumstance.
Yep.
And it's all the same characters. They have all the same powers we all know, but they're dealing with something on a level that many readers may not have been accustomed to.
Definitely.
I also think about, and I hope we talk about at some point in another book of the month, Sandman Mystery Theater, which is also, I think, one of the great finite series, but that also really explores the real underbelly of the Golden Age. And you talk about noir. Holy mackerel!
Mm.
Yeah.
Have you read that series?
Only bits and pieces.
Okay.
I've never read the full thing.
It's another mandatory assignment.
Yeah, I have not read that either. I think I have the
Really?
first,
Oh, Shane, you would love it. Oh,
I think I have the first 2 volumes that were recently reprinted. No, recently, like within the last few years.
well, not only that, there are ties that Robinson establishes ties between
Yeah.
Starman and the legacy of the Golden Age Sandman as well.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that
the story Sand and Stars, I think is what
Yeah.
Chris is talking about here. It was
Yeah.
originally conceived as a crossover between Starman and Sandman Mystery Theater. But I guess the publishing schedules didn't sync up the right way, so Robinson ended up just telling the whole story in the pages of Starman.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's those are 2 titles that there's definitely ties between them in terms of just the aesthetic and what they're trying to achieve with them.
Mhm.
They're very different characters, but I think they're both coming from a similar sensibility, and they're 2 of my favorite series.
Did Salmon Mystery Theater come out after Starman?
No, it came out. It was a '90s title,
Mhm. Yeah,
and it ended in I think 1999
Okay.
or so,
So they were kind of
So-
running synonymous with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
and it was a Vertigo title.
Yeah.
So
Going back to James Robinson's dialogue further on in this issue, I wonder what they thought as they went to their fates. These men, I can, I will, I dare, I shall, I must. I wonder what.
oh,
Chilling.
very
Yep.
memorable sequence.
Mm-hmm.
good pick, Levy Poo.
And later on,
I like how the Ragdoll been a third-rate villain. At his finest, he'd be little more than an annoyance to J. Garrick and others. Next carny petty thief in a silly suit.
And then he turns murder messiah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he becomes like the supervillain version, like Charles Manson. I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just reading this. It's he basically being built up by Robinson here into what you could imagine an Earth 2 Joker figure might have been
Hmm.
if
Sure.
if he had aged on into the 80s or 90s and
Yeah.
just kind of developed a flock later in life, and if he'd just taken to public speaking as the Ragdoll, and the detail that Robinson provides here that Ragdoll's father was a carnival barker, and how he might have inherited his gift for oratory and rhetoric from him. It's a great detail. It makes perfect sense.
And also going back to the T-shirt, how many times have we seen people wearing Charles Manson paraphernalia?
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
point there, Chris. Yeah.
So, which
Yeah.
I never understood, but well, people do it though. So
It's a
Yeah.
great commentary on
Yeah.
the specifically 1990s economy of iconography.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the sequence, I always found this thrilling, where Rex Tyler has to hold off this horde on the bridge, and they take you through the clock ticking down and the hour of power that he has. It's
Yep.
Yeah.
thrilling, the pace of the battle.
Yeah. So cool.
45 minutes, 15, 56 minutes, 57, 58. Oh, it's so well done.
Yeah. I've
Because you
never
think about
really
how-
seen him.
yeah.
I've never really seen his powers displayed that
Yeah.
simply on a page.
Because it reminds you of how really limited and dangerous what he's doing is, because he only can do it for an hour and then he's just a normal man. So
Yep.
Yeah.
it's-
He's always on a clock.
yep,
And Robinson did do something with this in the Golden Age too.
he sure did.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, he sure
Mhm.
did.
You know,
The-
Ted
the-
Knight
the-
when he was
the addictive aspect of it. Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
you know, which has been played
Yeah.
with by a few different writers over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Ted Knight was telling this whole story to Jack just 2 issues before this, basically foreshadowing the times past tale we're talking about in issue number 11, when he gets to this Our Man scene, he tells Jack, "No, he was a god that night, son. I was so proud of him, proud to know him." And now
Yep.
we see firsthand why.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of raise the question, though, if this was happening 13 years ago. I mean, Jack's supposed to be like 27 or 28. That means he would have been a teenager when all of this was going down. How has Jack never heard this story before?
Right.
Yeah.
They just may not
No
have ever
prize,
told
Murd. No
him.
prize.
DC
Oh,
has a
that's
sliding time
The
scale.
baldy.
Like, yeah,
In the DC
has a-
offices, it's called a baldy.
DC has a sliding time scale like every other company has a sliding time scale, and even that sliding time scale doesn't make any sense.
But I always love a story where they take, you have preconceived notions about certain characters or situations or eras, and then they turn everything on its head. I mean, you still like it's still Starman, it's still Jay Garrick, it's still the Golden Age Green Lantern, but they're facing an evil seemingly so insurmountable that in this moment of chaos and confusion, they take life.
Yeah.
And as the Shade says, a maniac deserved what he got. That was that. Close the file and forget. Or so the papers and the people said. The Ragdoll's body was stolen from the morgue the following afternoon.
And what a striking image there to finish it off, man.
Oof, yes.
And then you get into that timeless debate about, are there moments where, whether it's in our own reality or even in fiction, that should life be taken for the greater good? And that obviously weighed on Ted for the rest of his life.
It's
the situation.
Identity crisis style skeleton in these JKers' closets for the rest of their lives.
And that dynamic is fascinating because the shades that kind of like, well, kill him. Like, of course, I did what I had to do.
Yeah. For that matter, go back to the actual golden age of comics. Read some.
Oh, they killed a lot of villains.
Villains died a lot in those days. The golden age wasn't really the squeaky clean, wholesome thing that we tend to romanticize it into being.
Yeah, that's especially the early stuff. You're right on the money. The pre-code, right? There was
great way to put it.
Pre-code.
Yeah. Which kind of adds an extra ironic dimension to in this issue when the 5 JSAers are reminiscing among themselves. But when did all the lunatics become psychopaths? I mean, I remember when we fought the gambler and we tossed him into a vat of ice cream, and and they're guilty of the same thing that we comics fans tend to do, which is to romanticize those early days into being shinier and happier than they honestly were, because the golden age of comics was pretty rough and tumble. It was like the Wild West. And if they were reminiscing about the actual golden age, they wouldn't feel quite so many pangs of remorse over what ultimately happened.
It's like, they applied, I'm sorry, Murd, they applied this, as they get into the 50s in the Atom Age, they kind of did this retroactive like polishing of everything. The way the heroes portrayed and the wholesomeness and all of that. But like, you're right. If you go back to Superman was like a avenger for left-wing New Deal politics as early as
certainly
Roosevelt.
Yep.
Well, and that's why, whenever I hear anybody say, well, I mean, comic books were, back in the day they weren't political. Like, have you read a comic? Have you looked at the cover where Hitler's getting punched to immediately go like, obviously the insides may have been a little bit different, but politics and life itself, that's comic books. It's just the life changes and the politics change. Like that's just par for the course as time goes forward.
Well put. And I'm reminded now of a classic CGS episode, Politics and Comics. The gang discussed Prez. One of my favorites.
It was a crossover with a bunch of other podcasts about comics. Each of them attacked the issue from the topic from a different angle. And Peter
it was so fun.
Had the brilliant idea to just have us talk about Prez.
Yeah. Comic Timing was a part of that crossover, actually. We did our own Politics and Comics episode. That was the CGS Prez episode, was episode 526 from October 13th, 2008. And
right before the election. Yep.
And I think I know what I'm putting out on July 4th of this year as a classic geek speak. I think
that's a good one.
That'll work just fine. Yep.
Heck, President's Day is coming up next month. Why wait?
Actually, you make a very valid point, because a certain somebody is going to be out of town, so maybe it'll be airing a little bit earlier. So yeah, good point.
Yeah,
fantastic. While we're recommending additional listening here, we did our Book of the Month episode about Robinson's The Golden Age. But this was back in the days before we had episode numbers for Book of the Month episodes. But the date of release, here we go, July 31st, 2007. We'd like to hear what the CGS gang say about that story, which is an
2007
companion piece to Robinson's Starman.
Yep,
unbelievable.
And of note, I mean, since we're talking about other medias and what happened and what have you, because of the deal that James Robinson made with DC Comics, where they technically have to ask him first. Like they could easily
really
they could easily put him in whatever the heck they want, but out of politeness and common courtesy, and I think technically in the deal he signed for the character of Jack Knight, they have to ask his permission the same way they have to ask Neil Gaiman for permission to use Starman characters. Like
and they're honoring that. That's great.
They are honoring it as of
Yeah.
now, because you're looking at it, like he never showed up in Justice League Unlimited. I think he was in a crowd shot once. That's as close as we got. Was never in any of the JSA episodes of any of the various live action shows. Pretty sure he hasn't shown up in Starman, even though I thought he was going to.
I don't
But
think
the
he
fact
has.
that Robinson is directly involved in writing Stargirl, we can hold out hope that Jack Knight will eventually.
I hope just one episode. Just one.
Jack is not returned in the comics either, correct?
No,
No.
Nope.
Okay. I thought so.
No.
only in that issue. No, he wasn't even in that issue.
Yeah.
I was going to say the Starman 81 issue.
That
but
was
no,
just the shade, though.
that was
wasn't
just the shade.
it? Yeah.
Yes.
Was that the Blackest Night crossover?
Yeah,
Yeah.
David was in that issue. Well, sort of.
It was also episode 75 of Comic Timing. That was our politics and comics crossover episode.
What was your premise, honey?
Our premise, I think we just did general, because I'm looking at here. It was so long ago. I'm even trying to remember what the heck was in it. But it was John Carroll, a longtime friend of Comic Geek Speak and various other comics. Chad Burdett, Raf Suhu, and myself, as we go over our favorite political storylines, where we feel DC and Marvel fall politically, and the Obama and McCain one-shots. Placing it in history right there. Yep. That was back in 2008, November 3rd.
Wow.
Yep. Dang.
Gentlemen, this was thrilling.
Now I've got one more thing to share.
Please, please.
This was gifted to me by a listener. I am absolutely sorry. I thought I had it written down in where I keep it. I don't, to say who gifted it to me.
Mhm.
It is a preview copy of Starman from 1994.
Wow.
Like
Oh, wonderful.
ash can sort of,
Oh,
and it's got just black
Oh,
and white
wow.
uncorrected pages
Yeah.
in this like hard cardboard orange cover. Says Starman preview written by James Robinson, penciled by Tony Harris, inked by Wade Von Graubagger. Did I say that right?
Badger.
I think it's Graubadger, yeah.
Graubadger. For display only, not for sale. This preview is an uncorrected proof and may be subject to editorial changes before publication. Copyright 1994. And
Wow.
then there's a little synopsis in the beginning of where we're coming out of for 0 Hour, and then jumps right into the first little bit of the Zero issue.
Hot damn, man. That is a piece of history that I guarantee you were probably one of hundreds that has.
Yeah, and it's in phenomenal shape.
Wow.
I mean, you can't
Shane,
tell
it's
on
good to be
but-
loved, Shane. It's good to
Wow.
be loved.
Yeah, that is an absolute prized possession in my comics collection.
Fantastic.
Now I'm gonna make a not a promise, but because our sister tough. But I hope at some point, someday, we can talk about more of this series.
Oh,
I'd
absolutely.
love to return to the rest of it at some point. I know Shane would love to do that.
Yeah. I just what am I on? I think it's my third or maybe my fourth read through of the entire series, and I'm up to like issue 70, 71, and I stopped because I just can't. No. I read past my favorite issue, so I've got to be in the last arc of the entire series,
Well-
and I just can't bring myself to finish it again, which I do every time I get to the later 70s and I stop for a while because I just don't want it to end. And then when it ends, I do something else for a while, and then a couple years down the road, I start over.
Well, I continue to be happy that with the omnibus collections, and I don't know if they did this in the other giant tomes they came out, but that they include even stuff like the Hellboy issues.
Yep, which is wonderful. Yep.
And all that. Like I'm thrilled that they have those. The latest versions are like giant in comparison.
These
Go
are
ahead.
the most perfect sized omnibus I have
perfect.
ever encountered.
Yep.
And in fact, I was at my local comic shop yesterday, and they had out like you said, Ian, like this huge, like soft cover.
Yes.
It's like the latest version of stuff, but it's Shane would hate it. It's mammoth.
That would be the Starman Compendium, which came out on August 17th of this last year. Volume 2 of the compendium comes out on July 26th, 2022.
And are they collecting the whole series in just the 2 compendiums?
I think.
Let's see, because this one, it will actually have the Hellboy crossover.
Oh, good.
So they are continuing to release that along with it, but this will collect All-Star Comics 80-page giant number 1, Batman, Hellboy, Starman 1 and 2, JSA All-Stars number 4, and then Starman 43 to 81. So
All
yep,
right, that's it.
That's it.
yep.
Including the Plastic Knight issue.
Mm-hmm.
We conclude that Starman Hellboy Batman crossover, since it's intercompany.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite is that it's also going to have Starman Kongorilla number 1 included.
Aha.
Which is from
Tomas, and because both those characters were part of James Robinson's Justice League line.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Stars and Stripe number 0 is going to be included, and
that's
it's going to have all 12 issues of the Shade.
Oh wow, that's new.
Yeah.
I wish that Shade would have come out in a hardback.
I agree with you entirely.
Like this omnibus.
It was all timing, Shane. It was all timing because that was right when New 52 was happening, and DC could not care less.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was actually amazed they came out with the Shade book, to tell you the truth.
I think it was because it was all done already. I think that's the entire reason
maybe.
they even put it out. Yep.
There were bits and pieces of that very clearly were set in pre-Flashpoint continuity. But
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, DC just didn't care.
Yep.
My favorite memory of the Starman Hellboy Batman crossover is when Jack gets Batman to admit what his favorite Woody Allen movie is. He says begrudgingly, "Crimes and Misdemeanors."
Yeah, everybody has a favorite Woody Allen. Even the Spectre. He liked Bullets over Broadway.
Oh boy, this was awesome, gents. I'm so glad we got to it. And I'll say here we have an idea of what our next the month club is going to be. We don't know what month it's going to be, but I will mention here once we all get it, because that still has to happen. It looks like it's going to be Radiant Black Volume 1 will be our next book of the month. I'm scuttlebutting. It will happen eventually, but I'm scuttlebutting. The original idea was to do, I think, Volumes 1 and 2 of Why the Last Man. Considering that the series itself is now officially canceled, and I was kind of hoping that there'd be more seasons and it would make more sense for us to do it. But somewhere down the road, we will definitely do.
No, Radiant Black is a great choice.
Yep.
Ian, great choice.
Excellent.
It's a new book. It's. I mean, I've been talking it up a lot on this show ad nauseum.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Absolutely. All right. Yep. Go ahead, Murd.
It may be a little redundant at this point, but do we want to give our frickin' swear ratings?
Oh.
5.
5.
5 and up.
5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was right. It was redundant, but what the
heck? Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Yep. That's perfectly fine. I'll cut it from the episode if it's not the case, but Murd, are we ready to announce a certain something yet, or is it perhaps next episode?
I was holding it in reserve for next episode, but
excellent.
I don't really have an official boilerplate to read from at this point, but yes, the best of awards will be taking place.
Terrific. It will stay in the episode. You guys know it's going to happen, but stay tuned for next episode for an official announcement. So there we go. Terrific. Alrighty, well, reminder once again that we are sponsored by you, the fair listeners, over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak, and we would not be able to do any of this without your continued support of the show. As 2022 rolls on, I am in the beginning head planning stages, aka haven't even sent out any feelers on it, but we're going to do another Super Zoom, and it will hopefully be within the next month or two. And everybody who is a part of our socials and what have you will make sure to broadcast it to all you fine folks and try to get as many geeks as possible included on that when it does happen, because it's
a roll call of glory.
Exactly. It's been a while, and let's try to make this happen. As a whole bunch of people were like, hey, when this pandemic is over, we should try to get a some sort of super show thing together. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's going to happen, but at the same time, let's all gather in the virtual space and make magic happen. So there we go. And Shane, you have one more thing to do on this episode. So ready when you are.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Check us out on youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Let us know what you think of Starman, pros and cons, and if you've read it or if we've inspired you to read it. Hopefully that's the case if you never did. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episodes. We truly do appreciate it. Send in your Muddle the Murds, even though we don't do them this month, this episode rather. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars.
Job well done.
Oscar Wilde, see us out.
I actually have that advertisement cut out from an
Uh-huh.
old comic, and I have it at my desk at work.
Now, in my senior class yearbook, in my entry, I put that little quotation as a blurb underneath my entry.
Nice.
If I
Nice.
didn't think we would have gotten dinged on YouTube for it, I was gonna end with "There's a starman."
Yeah.
Waiting in the sky, he'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he blows our minds.